Imagine thieves dressed like cops strolling into a famous museum, tying up the guards and walking out with art worth $500 million, leaving behind only empty frames and a few donut crumbs. Or picture a priceless masterpiece maybe sliced right out of its church frame by the mafia, vanishing without a trace, possibly fed to pigs or burned in a hidden fireplace. Think about a super sneaky thief breaking into a major Paris museum, grabbing 5 iconic paintings, and then supposedly one of his team just dumps them in a regular street bin because they got scared. And what if legendary works by artists like Monet and Picasso ended up as nothing but ash in an old Romanian stove, all to destroy evidence? Some heists are so audacious, they happen in broad daylight, or even target the same painting in the same museum twice. Detectives have been scratching their heads for years, sometimes decades, over these incredible art crimes. The art world is still waiting, hoping these treasures might one day reappear. Number 15. Raphael's lost masterpiece. The Ghost of Poland's art. One of the most significant paintings to go missing during World War II is Raphael's Portrait of a Young Man, painted around 1513 or 1514. This incredible piece was part of the Czartoryski family collection in Krakow, Poland. When the Nazis invaded Poland in 1939, they began a systematic looting of art and cultural treasures. This Raphael, considered by many to be almost as important as Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, was high on their list. Hans Frank, the Nazi governor-general of occupied Poland, seized the painting. He reportedly hung it in his residence at Wall Castle in Krakow. It was intended to be a showpiece in Adolf Hitler's planned Fuhrer Museum in Linz, Austria, a massive museum complex that was never fully realized. The last confirmed sighting of Portrait of a Young Man was in 1945, as the war was drawing to a close and Nazi officials were scrambling. What happened to it then is a mystery that has haunted art historians and Polish authorities for decades. Did it get destroyed in the chaos of bombing raids? Was it hidden away in one of the many secret Nazi stashes, perhaps in a salt mine or remote castle, and never found? Some theories suggest a fleeing Nazi official took it, or maybe it fell into the hands of Soviet soldiers. Its true appearance is primarily known from black and white photographs, though a pre-war color copy also exists. The Polish government has never given up the search, actively pursuing any leads that emerge. The value is considered priceless, but if it were to ever appear on the market, it would likely fetch over $100 million. For now, it remains a painful symbol of cultural loss. Number 14. The Amber Room. A palace chamber vanished into thin air. This isn't just a painting or a sculpture. It's an entire room, a breathtaking creation of amber panels, gold leaf, and mirrors. The Amber Room was constructed in Prussia in the early 18th century and gifted to Russian Tsar Peter the Great in 1716. It was installed in the Catherine Palace of Tsarskoye Selo, near St. Petersburg, where it was expanded and became an opulent wonder, sometimes called the. Its worth is considered immeasurable. When Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, they targeted cultural treasures. As German troops approached Tsarskoye Selo, Soviet curators tried to disassemble the Amber Room for evacuation. However, the amber panels were old and brittle and began to crumble. They decided instead to try and hide it behind wallpaper, hoping the Germans wouldn't find it. This attempt, German soldiers located the room, carefully disassembled it in 36 hours, packed it into 27 crates, and shipped it to Königsberg Castle in East Prussia, now Kaliningrad, Russia. It was put on display there. In late 1943, with the war turning against Germany, the room was again packed away. What happened next is one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Königsberg was heavily bombed by Allied forces in August 1944, and the city was eventually taken by the Soviet Army in April 1945. The Amber Room had vanished. Was it destroyed in the bombings? Some eyewitness accounts from Germans claimed it was loaded onto a ship, the Wilhelm Gustloff, which was sunk in the Baltic Sea by a Soviet submarine. Others believe it was hidden in underground bunkers or mines. There have been countless searches and numerous theories, from it being buried in the Kaliningrad region to being secretly shipped to South America with fleeing Nazis. A few original pieces, like a stone mosaic and a chest of drawers, have surfaced over the years, but the room itself remains lost. A magnificent reconstruction of the Amber Room was completed in the Catherine Palace in 2003, but the fate of the original still baffles treasure hunters and historians. Number 13. Fabergé's Missing Eggs. An Imperial Treasure Hunt. Between 1885 and 1917, the House of Fabergé, under the genius of Peter Carl Fabergé, created a series of 50 incredibly ornate and jeweled imperial Easter eggs for the Russian Tsars Alexander III and Nicholas II. Each egg was unique, a masterpiece of craftsmanship containing a surprise within. These weren't just pretty objects, they were symbols of the Romanov dynasty's immense wealth and artistry. Then came the Russian Revolution in 1917. The monarchy was overthrown, and the Bolsheviks confiscated imperial treasures, including the Fabergé eggs. Many were stored in the Kremlin armory. Over the following years, some were sold off by the Soviet government to Western collectors to raise foreign currency. This is how many of the eggs ended up in museums and private collections around the world. However, out of the 50 imperial eggs made, 7 remain unaccounted for today. Their exact whereabouts are a tantalizing mystery. These missing treasures include the 1888 cherub with chariot egg, the 1889 necessaire egg, and the 1903 royal Danish egg. Are they gathering dust in someone's attic, their true identity unknown? Could they be hidden away in a secret vault? The story of the third imperial egg offers a glimmer of hope. Made in 1887, it was lost for decades until 2012, when a scrap metal dealer in the American Midwest bought a gold ornament for its metal value. Turned out to be the missing egg, worth an estimated $33 million. He had no idea what it was until he stumbled across an article online. This incredible discovery fueled the belief that other missing eggs might still be out there waiting to be found. The hunt for these lost imperial treasures continues, captivating collectors and historians alike. Number 12. The Worcester Museum Raid. Solved case. Unsolved culprits. On the night of May 17, 1972, the Worcester Art Museum in Massachusetts became the scene of a bold and aggressive art heist. 2 armed men, their faces hidden by stocking masks, burst into the museum. They quickly overpowered the 2 security guards on duty, tying them up. In a moment of unnecessary violence, one of the thieves shot one of the guards, though thankfully the injury was not fatal. The thieves knew what they were after. They didn't just grab random pieces. They targeted some of the museum's most valuable works. They made off with 4 masterpieces: Rembrandt's Saint Bartholomew, Pablo Picasso's Mother and Child, Paul Gauguin's The Brooding Woman, and another Gauguin piece, Head of a Woman. At the time, the combined value of these paintings was estimated to be over $1 million, a huge sum in 1972 and worth considerably more today. The thieves seemed to be a strange mix of professional and amateur. Their targeting was precise, but the shooting of the guards seemed reckless and unnecessary, drawing more heat than a quieter theft might have. Soon after the robbery, A ransom demand for $100,000 was made. The FBI became heavily involved, and the art world held its breath. The mystery of the stolen paintings didn't last too long. But the mystery of the thieves endures. About 6 weeks after the heist, following an anonymous tip-off, all 4 paintings were recovered. They were found stashed in a boathouse in the small town of North Smithfield, Rhode Island. The art was safe, but the culprits were never identified or caught. Who were these men? Why did they abandon the paintings? Did the heat get too much for them? Decades later, the case is technically closed because the art was returned, but the identities of the Worcester art raiders remain a baffling unknown. Number 11. Henry Moore's Bronze Giant, melted for pennies. Henry Moore is one of Britain's most famous sculptors, known for his large, abstract bronze figures. One of his significant works, Reclining, figure 1969-70, was a massive bronze sculpture weighing over 2 tons, about 4,600 pounds, and valued at around £3 million. It was proudly displayed at the Henry Moore Foundation in Perry Green, Hertfordshire, a place dedicated to his life and work. On a December night in 2005, this giant piece of art vanished. It wasn't subtly smuggled out. It was a brazen operation. Thieves used a crane and a stolen flatbed truck to lift the huge sculpture and drive away with it. The sheer audacity of stealing something so large and heavy was shocking. Police launched an investigation, but the sculpture was nowhere to be found. The most widely accepted and heartbreaking theory is that the thieves didn't care about the art at all. They likely stole it for its scrap metal value. Bronze is an alloy of copper and tin, and at the time the scrap value of the 2-ton sculpture would have been only around £5,000. The thought that a unique multi-million-pound artwork by a master sculptor could be callously melted down for such a tiny fraction of its artistic worth horrified the art community and the public. While some arrests were made in connection with handling stolen vehicles used in the theft, no one has ever been definitively caught and convicted for the actual theft of the reclining figure. Despite extensive appeals and the significant cultural loss, the sculpture has never been recovered. The foundation and art lovers can only assume it met a sad end in a smelter's furnace, a baffling act of cultural vandalism for a pittance. Number 10. The Silent Stradivarius, a violin's mysterious disappearance. Antonio Stradivari was a legendary Italian violin maker, and his instruments, known as Stradivarius violins, are considered among the finest stringed instruments ever created. They are incredibly rare and command millions of dollars. One such instrument was the Davidoff Marini Stradivarius, crafted in 1727. It was named after 2 of its previous owners, Russian cellist Karl Davidoff, and more famously the celebrated Austrian-born violinist Erika Morini. Erika Morini, a child prodigy who became a world-renowned concert violinist, acquired the violin in 1924. It was her most prized possession, the instrument through which she channeled her incredible talent for decades. As she aged, she became increasingly reclusive and protective of her Stradivarius. In October 1995, Erika Morini, then 91 years old and in failing health, was in a New York City hospital. While she was away from her Fifth Avenue apartment, the precious Davidoff Marini Stradivarius, valued at $3,500,000 at the time, was stolen. It vanished from a locked closet in her bedroom. There were no signs of forced entry, leading to suspicions that the thief might have had a key or was someone known to Morini or her household. Erika Morini died just days after the theft, reportedly never being told that her beloved violin was gone. The instrument, with its unique sound and documented history, would be almost impossible to sell on the legitimate market. Any reputable dealer or auction house would immediately recognize it. This has led to speculation that it might have been stolen by a collector who intended to keep it hidden, or perhaps by someone who didn't realize how difficult it would be to dispose of. The FBI's art crime team has the Davidoff Marini Stradivarius on its list of stolen art. Decades later, the violin remains silent, its whereabouts a deeply baffling mystery in the music world. Number 9. Rusborough House, the mansion that couldn't stop getting robbed. Rusborough House, a stunning Palladian mansion in County Wicklow, Ireland, was once home to Sir Alfred Beat, a British politician and art collector who inherited a fabulous collection of old master paintings. Unfortunately, this magnificent house and its treasures became a repeated target for art thieves, making its story one of the most notorious in art crime history. The house was robbed 4 times, in 1974, 1986, 2001, and 2002. The 1974 theft was carried out by an IRA gang, led by Rose Dugdale, who stole 19 paintings to raise funds and demand the transfer of IRA prisoners. These were later recovered. The most infamous heist occurred in 1986, orchestrated by the notorious Dublin crime boss Martin Cahill, known as the General. Cahill's heavily armed gang burst into the house, quickly overpowering staff and disabling alarms. They stole 18 paintings, including masterpieces by Vermeer, Lady, writing a letter with her maid, Goya, Rubens, and Gainsborough. The value was immense. Cahill's motives were likely to hold the paintings for ransom or to trade them within the international underworld. Over several years, many of these paintings were recovered in various sting operations across Europe. The Vermeer, for instance, turned up in Antwerp in 1993. Even after these major heists, Rusborough was hit again in 2001 and 2002, with more paintings stolen, though these were generally of lesser value than the Gaiety collection masterpieces. Most of the truly iconic works stolen over the years have eventually been recovered, often after complex police operations. However, the sheer audacity of repeatedly targeting the same location is baffling. While the big names like the Vermeer are back the full extent of what might still be missing from the lesser-known items taken in all these raids, and the complete network of individuals involved in their dispersal remains a subject of intrigue. The legend of Rusborough's vulnerability and the General's daring raid continues to fascinate. Number 8. Dresden's Green Vault, a billion-dollar jewel heist and lingering shadows. The Green Vault, Runes Gemolb, in Dresden, Germany, is one of Europe's oldest and most magnificent treasure museums. Founded by Augustus the Strong in the early 18th century. It houses an incredible collection of jewels and precious objects. On November 25, 2019, it became the target of one of the most spectacular art heists in modern history. In the early hours of the morning, thieves started a small fire at a nearby electrical junction box, causing a power outage that plunged the surrounding streets into darkness and disabled some security systems. They then forced their way into the museum by cutting through an iron grill on a window and smashing the glass. Once inside the jewel room, they used an axe to shatter a display case. The whole operation took only a few minutes. The thieves escaped with at least 21 pieces of 18th century royal jewelry, adorned with more than 4,300 diamonds, rubies, and emeralds. Among the stolen items were the Saxon white diamond, a 49-carat stone, a diamond-encrusted sword and scabbard, and various elaborate brooches and epaulets. The historical and cultural value is priceless, but authorities estimated the insured value at around €113 million, with a potential black market value, if broken up, reaching towards €1 billion. Suspicion quickly fell on organized crime. In the following years, several arrests were made, linking the heist to members of the Remo clan, a well-known crime family based in Berlin. In December 2022, a significant portion of the stolen items, though not all, were recovered after reported negotiations between authorities and lawyers for some of the suspects. However, many key pieces, including the famous Saxon white diamond and the diamond epaulette of Queen Amalie Auguste, remain missing. There are grave fears that these irreplaceable treasures may have been broken apart, with the gems recut to disguise them, making them untraceable. While some perpetrators have been convicted, the full recovery of all items and the complete dismantling of the network behind this audacious theft remain elusive, leaving a shadow over this historic collection. Number 7. The Montreal Skylight Caper, Canada's biggest art mystery. In the early hours of September 4, 1972, while the city of Montreal was still buzzing from the recent Olympic Games, a daring robbery was underway at the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. It would become the largest art theft in Canadian history, a mystery that still puzzles investigators. A group of armed thieves, their faces obscured, gained access to the museum by climbing onto the roof and entering through a skylight that was under repair. They descended using a rope ladder. Once inside, they surprised and tied up the 3 security guards on duty. Thieves seemed to know their way around and had specific intentions. They gathered a collection of 18 valuable paintings, including a rare Rembrandt landscape with cottages and works by other masters like Delacroix, Corot, and Rubens. They also took 39 pieces of jewelry. The total value of the haul was estimated at $2 million at the time, which would be tens of millions of dollars today. Their plan, however, hit a snag. Believed they intended to steal even more, but as they were preparing to leave, an alarm was apparently triggered. Some reports suggest one of the thieves accidentally set it off. Panicked, they made a hasty retreat, but their rope ladder reportedly broke, forcing them to abandon some of their loot. In the aftermath, ransom demands were made, but no exchange ever successfully took place. A few of the less significant items, including some of the jewelry and a couple of minor paintings, were recovered over time, sometimes through anonymous tips or during unrelated investigation. However, the most valuable pieces, including the prized Rembrandt and paintings by Jan Bruegel the Elder and Corot, have never been seen again. Numerous theories have circulated over the decades involving organized crime or private collectors, but no solid leads have led to the recovery of the main artworks or the conviction of the perpetrators. The Skylight Caper remains a gaping hole in Canada's cultural heritage. Number 6. Van Gogh's twice stolen poppy, Cairo's million-dollar puzzle. Vincent van Gogh's painting Poppy Flowers, also known as Vase with Viscaria, is a vibrant, beautiful work believed to have been painted in 1887. It's a relatively small canvas, but carries an enormous estimated value of $50 to $55 million. Its fame, however, is matched by its unfortunate history of being a magnet for thieves, specifically at the Mohammed Mahmoud Khalil Museum in Cairo, Egypt. In August 2010, the painting was stolen from the museum in broad daylight. Thieves simply cut the canvas from its frame and walked out. What made this theft particularly shocking and baffling was the state of security at the museum. It was later revealed that only 7 of the 43 security cameras were actually working at the time of the heist. Moreover, none of the museum's alarms were sounding. This level of negligence was astounding for an institution housing such valuable artworks. Adding to the disbelief, this was the second time this exact painting had been stolen from the very same museum. The first theft occurred in June 1977. On that occasion, the Poppy Flowers was missing for a decade before it was eventually recovered in Kuwait in 1987. The circumstances surrounding its first recovery were never fully publicized. Following the 2010 theft, there was a brief moment of confusion when Egyptian officials triumphantly announced that the painting had been recovered from 2 Italian suspects at Cairo International Airport, just hours after it was stolen. However, this announcement turned out to be false and was quickly retracted, causing considerable embarrassment. Several museum officials, including the Deputy Minister of Culture, later faced charges and convictions for negligence related to the security lapses. Despite international alerts and ongoing investigations, Van Gogh's Poppy Flowers remains missing. Its disappearance highlights not only the allure of high-value art to criminals, but also the critical importance of robust security for cultural treasures. Number 5. The Kunchal Catastrophe. Masterpieces up in smoke. One of the most heartbreaking art heists of recent times occurred at the Kunsthalle Museum in Rotterdam, Netherlands, on October 16, 2012. In a swift and brutal raid that lasted only about 3 minutes, thieves made off with 7 incredibly valuable paintings from the Triton Foundation's avant-garde collection, which were on display at the museum. The stolen artworks were a roll call of modern masters: Pablo Picasso's Tête d'Harlequin and Ray Matisse's La Lasso and Blanc and Jaron Crossbridge, London, Paul Gauguin's Femme devant une fenêtre ouverte, Meyer de Haan's Otter Portrait, and Lucian Freud's Woman with Eyes Closed. The estimated value of the haul ranged from €50 million to €100 million, but their cultural worth was immeasurable. Thieves had broken in through an emergency exit in the early hours of the morning. Despite the museum's security, they were in and out before police could respond effectively. The investigation soon led authorities to Romania, where several suspects were arrested. What followed was a tragic turn of events that stunned the art world. Olga Dogaru, the mother of Radu Dogaru, one of the lead suspects, confessed to police that she had burned the paintings. She claimed she initially buried them in an abandoned house and then in a cemetery in the village of Carcaliu. But after her son was arrested, fearing that the paintings would be found and used as evidence, she said she dug them up and burned them in the stove in her home. Forensic investigators examined ashes from her stove and found traces of paint, canvas, and nails, some of which were consistent with materials used in paintings from the period of the stolen works. Later, Olga Dogaru retracted her confession, then seemed to waver again. The suspects were convicted, but the fate of the paintings remains a source of anguish. While some hold out a sliver of hope that perhaps not all were destroyed, or that her confession was false, the evidence strongly suggests that these irreplaceable masterpieces were indeed reduced to ash. It stands as a devastating loss, a baffling act of destruction, fueled by fear and desperation. Number 4. Paris's Phantom Thief. 5 paintings, 1 open window, 0 art. In the early hours of May 20, 2010, a lone thief executed one of the most audacious art heists in recent memory at the Musée d'Art Moderne de la Ville de Paris. The museum, located in a prodigious area of Paris, discovered that morning that 5 masterpieces were missing from its collection. The stolen works were Pablo Picasso's The Pigeon au Petit Pois, Pigeon with Peas, Henri Matisse's La Pastorale, Pastorat, George Braque's L'Olivier Près de l'Estaque, Olive Tree near Estaque, Amadeo Modigliani's La Femme Eventale, Woman with a Fan, and Fernand Léger's Nature Morte aux Chandeliers, Still Life with Candlesticks. Combined value was estimated at around €100 million, though some reports suggested it could be as high as €500 million. Investigators found that the thief had carefully cut a padlock on a gate, then smashed a window to gain entry. What was particularly baffling was that the museum's sophisticated alarm system had been malfunctioning for weeks and was awaiting repair. Moreover, motion detectors that should have been triggered apparently failed. The 3 guards on duty that night claimed they saw nothing and heard nothing. The thief, later identified as Varon Tomek, nicknamed Spider-Man for his climbing skills in previous robberies, was eventually arrested in 2011. During his trial, Tomek confessed to the heist. He claimed he had initially only planned to steal the ledger painting for a commissioner, Jean-Michel Corvez, an antiques dealer. However, because the alarms didn't sound, he said he decided to take the other 4 highly valuable paintings as well, selecting them almost at random. The true mystery deepened with what happened to the paintings. Tomek stated he passed the artworks to Corvez, who then allegedly gave them to another accomplice, Jonathan Byrne, a watch expert, for hiding. Byrne, the investigation, told authorities that he panicked when he thought police were closing in, and in a moment of fear destroyed the paintings and threw them into a garbage container. However, investigators and many in the art world have expressed strong doubts about this claim, given the immense value of the works. Why destroy something so valuable, instead of trying to hide it better? Despite the convictions of Tomek, Corvez, and Byrne, none of the 5 paintings have ever been recovered. Their fate remains a huge, baffling question mark. Number 3. The Ghent Altarpiece Riddle. A single panel. A deathbed secret. The Ghent Altarpiece, formerly known as the Adoration of the Mystic Lamb, completed in 1432 by brothers Hubert and Jan van Eyck, is a monumental masterpiece of early Netherlandish painting. Housed in the Cathedral of St. Bavo in Ghent, Belgium, this polyptych, a painting on multiple panels, has had a turbulent history, surviving fires, iconoclasm, and looting by Napoleon and Nazi Germany. But one of its panels remains the subject of an enduring mystery. On the night of April 10, 1934, 2 panels were stolen from the altarpiece: the Just Judges and St. John the Baptist. Panel of St. John the Baptist was soon found abandoned in a train station locker in Brussels. However, the Just Judges panel remained missing. A note was left at the scene of the crime rather cryptically, stating it was taken from Germany by the Treaty of Versailles, a confusing reference as the altarpiece was Belgian. Soon after, the Bishop of Ghent began receiving a series of ransom letters, demanding 1 million Belgian francs for the return of the panel. 13 letters were exchanged in total. A partial ransom was paid as a show of good faith, but the Just Judges was not returned. The case took a dramatic turn in November 1934. A self-proclaimed stockbroker and local politician named Arsène Godertier collapsed at a political rally. On his deathbed, he summoned his lawyer and reportedly whispered that he was the only one who knew where the missing panel was hidden. He gave his lawyer a key and a note, saying, "This contains the secret." The note referred to a file in his desk which contained copies of the ransom notes, and a final unsent note indicating the panel was in a place where neither he nor anyone else could retrieve it without attracting public attention. Eder died before he could reveal the exact location. Despite extensive searches based on Godertier's cryptic clues, the original Just Judges panel has never been found. Was it hidden so well that it remains undiscovered? Was Godertier's claim a final act of misdirection? Theories abound, from it being walled up in a church to being buried somewhere in Ghent. In 1945, a brilliant copy of the panel, painted by art restorer Jeff van der Vecken, was installed in the altarpiece, where it remains today. The original Just Judges is still one of the art world's most sought-after lost treasures. Its disappearance a baffling detective story. Number 2. Caravaggio's Lost Nativity, a Mafia masterpiece mystery. Michelangelo Merisi da Caravaggio was a revolutionary Italian painter, known for his dramatic use of light and shadow, chiaroscuro, and his intensely realistic depictions. One of his later masterpieces, Nativity with Saint Francis and Saint Lawrence, painted in 1600, hung above the altar in the Oratory of San Lorenzo in Palermo, Sicily. This large canvas depicted the birth of Jesus, attended by Saints Francis and Lawrence, Mary Joseph, an angel, and an ox. In October 1969, this priceless painting vanished. Two thieves are believed to have entered the oratory, crudely cut the painting from its frame, and disappeared with it. The value at the time was estimated to be around $20 million, but today it would be considered virtually priceless and irreplaceable. From the beginning, suspicion fell heavily on the Sicilian mafia, the Cosa Nostra. Palermo was, and to some extent still is, a city where the mafia's influence is deeply entrenched. Over the decades, various mafia informants, pentiti, have offered conflicting and often horrifying accounts of the painting's fate. One story, from a former hitman, claimed that the painting was often displayed at important mafia gatherings as a symbol of power and prestige. Another informant alleged that the thieves were amateurs who damaged the painting during the theft, and again while trying to roll it up. He claimed it was then hidden in a barn where it was further damaged by rats and pigs, and eventually destroyed. Yet another account suggested it was sold to a buyer in Switzerland or Eastern Europe, but then damaged in an earthquake in southern Italy in 1980, and subsequently cut into pieces to sell off the undamaged sections. Some believe it was simply burned. The Italian authorities have never stopped searching for the Caravaggio. Art detectives have pursued leads across the globe. In 2015, a high-tech replica was created and installed in the Oratory of San Lorenzo to fill the void left by the stolen masterpiece. Despite numerous investigations and the chilling testimonies, the true fate of Caravaggio's Nativity remains one of the art world's most disturbing and baffling unsolved crimes. Many fear it is lost forever, a casualty of organized crime's callous disregard for cultural heritage. Number 1. The Gardner Heist. $500 million of art vanished forever. In the early morning hours after St. Patrick's Day, on March 18, 1990, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston became the scene of the largest art heist in world history, a crime that continues to baffle investigators. Two men disguised as Boston police officers approached the museum's side entrance. They told the security guard on duty that they were responding to a report of a disturbance. Breaking protocol, the guard let them in. Once inside, the fake cops quickly overpowered the two young guards, handcuffed them, and took them to the museum's basement, where they were bound with duct tape. Amazingly, the thieves didn't bring their own handcuffs or tape. They used the museum's. The thieves then had the museum to themselves for an astonishing 81 minutes. They didn't just grab and run, they selectively roamed the galleries. They cut paintings directly from their frames, damaging them in the process. In total, they stole 13 artworks, including Johannes Vermeer's The Concert, one of only about 36 known Vermeers and considered the most valuable unrecovered painting in the world, Rembrandt's only seascape, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, and his A Lady and Gentleman in Black. Works by Edgar Degas, Edouard Manet, and Govert Flinck were also taken, along with a Chinese bronze beaker, a gu, and a Napoleonic eagle finial. The total value of the stolen art is estimated to be over $500 million. What makes the Gardner heist so baffling are the many unanswered questions. Why these specific pieces? The thieves left behind other arguably more valuable works like Titian's Europa. Were they sophisticated art connoisseurs or clumsy opportunists. They damaged valuable canvases, but also took time to unscrew the bolts holding the Napoleonic finial. They even took a relatively worthless eagle finial, while leaving valuable items nearby. The guards reported that one of the thieves had a passing resemblance to the rock star Freddie Mercury. The FBI has investigated numerous leads over the decades, exploring connections to the Boston Mafia, Irish Republican Army sympathizers, and various local criminals and international art thieves, despite a $10 million reward offered by the museum for information leading to the safe return of the art, and the FBI stating they believe they know the identities of the original thieves, now deceased, and that the art changed hands through organized crime networks. None of the 13 pieces have ever been recovered. The empty frames still hang in the Gardner Museum, a poignant reminder of the great cultural loss and one of the most audacious and perplexing unsolved crimes in history.